So let me ask you this. What do you think is the place for a citizen to consider conspiracy? How does a citizen think about possible conspiracies? What do we call because, again, not just about conspiracy theories, but how about possible conspiracies? How should a citizen think about them? Should a citizen think that it's definitely possible, or should a citizen be listening and saying, "Oh, I want to filter this through the media"? Or how much do you think that the media actually gives the real facts in order for a citizen to think it through?
So I'm not sure of their existence right now. I'm pretty sure they're still doing good work. It's Project Veritas. Those are real journalists who go in and disguise themselves and go undercover to get real information. These are the kinds of journalists that the CIA would be assassinating back in the day, or maybe even today. I don't know.
Welcome to the Generation Zion podcast with Todd and David. Together, they discuss the war against God in the world today.
Hello and welcome back to the Generation Zion podcast. I'm David.
I'm Todd.
And after taking our short hiatus, very short, definitely not a 6-month hiatus, we're back, and Todd's going to be leading this one. He's got some questions for me.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I find today is that the term conspiracy and the other more specific term, conspiracy theory or theorist, has become a bad word. It has become a word that has, quite frankly, been weaponized by people, and weaponized by people on both sides. If you ever want to brand somebody a crackpot, a whack job, you just call them a conspiracy theorist. It doesn't matter what it might be. It's just that if you say that, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist or you believe in that, that's a conspiracy theory. You're saying that on the face of it, it is just a load of crap, and if you believe that, you're just nothing but a nut. But the fact of the matter is, everybody believes in conspiracies. Conspiracies are a real thing. They've always been a real thing. In the Roman days, there was a conspiracy to kill Caesar. They did so. That was a conspiracy. And what a conspiracy is in general, one or more people colluding together, getting together, and usually to do something nefarious. And there's even a legal term, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what all the details of the the legalities of it, but there's a legal term of conspiracy. So it actually is a thing. It has not been created out of thin air to say, oh, you're just a whack job. Where it comes in, where it's been, and it comes into play here, and where it becomes this sort of bad word, the pejorative, if you want to just brand somebody a conspiracy theorist, is nowadays, and particularly you see it in media. The fact of the matter is that a lot of things have become labeled as conspiracy theories, even if later on they are proven true. The fact of the matter is, again, everybody believes a conspiracy. The question is, what conspiracies do you believe? On the left, you can believe, for example, that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians. And you can say that, hey, this was a conspiracy to affect an election and to destroy it before it even happened, and then even maybe do some things after the fact. On the right, you move 4 years down the line, and there are conspiracy theories about what happened in the 2020 election. These are just two basic examples, but they happen all the time. What I'm curious about, and this is why I want to talk with you, David, is somebody of your age, somebody of this Generation Z, the Gen Z mindset, what do they think about conspiracies, number one? And then I'm going to go through a list of things that have happened in the past that actually did happen, and there are proofs of it. And do you know about them, number one? And number two, if you don't know about them, or you do know about them, really, have you really heard much about it? So we don't have to get into the things themselves that much. I'm just curious about whether you've heard about them. But what I'd love to know is, what does Gen Z think about conspiracy? So I'm going to throw that over to you first. What do Gen Z think about conspiracy theories? How do they handle them? What do they think of them? And is it something that is just a bad word when you hear that?
So obviously, I can't speak for everyone in my generation, but I guess you can divide them to like sectors of people. As you know, every passing generation seems to be getting stupider and stupider. So there are people like me in the know who know these things, and I don't want to say they're 100% truthful, but we know that these things could possibly be happening. We know about these conspiracies, and there's another group of people who I like to consider terminally online who know about this whole iceberg of conspiracy theories that are probably so out there that there's no possibility or feasibility that they could be true at all. And there's so many different kinds of theories. And some people will choose to believe them, and others don't even recognize them. Like I just said, people are getting stupider and stupider every generation. There's people that just don't even care or recognize them to even a small degree because they just don't care about what's going on around them in the world. And there's also different political parties. Contrary to what the mainstream wants people to believe, Gen Z is actually very conservative. At least when given surveys and stuff, there are a lot of politically ambiguous people where they take some from here, they take some from there. That seems to be a lot more popular, which is why the independent party is growing in popularity, which is still a waste of a vote in my opinion, even though I do like RFK as an independent candidate. But besides that, there's just too many different kinds of people to speak for an entire generation. I mean, if you look at the mainstream media, you're going to see a lot of like leftists, and like, oh, these are just conspiracy theories, and labeling people on the right as conspiracy theorists, and that's what most people see because that's what the mainstream media tries to push out to people. But I can't really say what we think of them as a whole generation. I can't speak for everyone.
Well, I think that's fair. I think that it's difficult to speak for a generation as a whole. And I know that for me, I'm a Gen Xer. And I never really considered myself a Gen Xer. Like, it wasn't a thing that I adopted. It was just what we were labeled. And so I certainly can't speak for my generation. But I know that right now, the idea of conspiracy theories has been has sort of built up into a fever pitch on both sides. And I think one of the biggest problems is that the idea of a conspiracy theory tends to be linked to something that truly sounds like whack jobbery. Like, there are reptilians, and Hillary Clinton is a reptilian, and it's obvious if you just look in her eyes, you can see the reptilian eyes, and she is a gray or I can't even think of the other ones. It's not something that I ever even entertained. If anybody's going to be a reptilian, as far as I'm concerned, Hillary Clinton is going to be one of them. But I don't believe there is such a thing as a reptilian. But that's what tends to be lumped in with everything else. And I personally think that understanding when you go back and you start to see what has been done, I think there are conspiracies that have happened, but I think there are a lot of things that have happened that we don't need to call them conspiracies or not. But that's where this list comes in, and I'm going to read you a list, and this list is well.
So I'll stop you for 1 second. So the reptilian thing, yeah, obviously it sounds ridiculous, right? But we've heard the government say, or leftists in particular say, oh, the government would never do that, and then the government does that, and they're doing it in plain sight. And if you point it out, it seems stupid because they've already convinced you and convinced themselves that the government would never do that. So I'm not. I don't believe that the reptilian thing is true, but it's just one of those things that like they could be doing it in front of us now and just make it look like they're wearing a ton of makeup or something. And if you said, "Oh, that's actually a reptilian," you look stupid, and they're discrediting it. And that can apply to a lot of different conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean that's the thing is there are these things out there. It's like being a flat earther. Look, I don't believe in the flat earth theory. I don't even know what the full argument is for a flat earth aside from a couple things that I've heard off on the side. But it's possible you could have an actual debate about it. And but what's the other part about conspiracies is it tends to make people really upset. It tends to really put a line down the middle, and people either believe one thing or they believe the other, and you either have to believe your side or their side. Otherwise, you're just a complete idiot and whack job. But here's where I think that and I'll say the government allows that, almost encourages that, and I think the media feeds that, is because then it can hide things that actually have happened. And this is where this list comes in. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read some of these to you and see if you've ever heard any of this before, if you know anything about any of these things. So, have you ever heard of someone named Naira and her part in the Iraq War?
So I know there's a lot of conspiracy surrounding the Iraq War. Like, we never found any WMDs. We were going there for gold and other things like that. But I've never heard that name.
Have you ever heard of Operation Mockingbird?
Yes, I'm very familiar with that.
How about Operation Paperclip?
I've heard it. I'm sure if you mentioned it, I'd know it. I would say it's the same as Mockingbird. It's just not as I'm not as well versed in it.
So Operation Paperclip essentially was after World War II that they brought a lot of former Nazis.
Yes, I know what you're talking
over
about.
to the United States and other parts in order to be able to basically not let as it was pitched, and not let the science go to waste, and to use that. The next one is the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Have you ever heard of the Gulf of Tonkin incident?
Never heard of that.
All right. That was a situation that happened in the Vietnam. That's actually supposedly an attack on a boat in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is one of the reasons why that we went into Vietnam officially. How about Operation Sea Spray?
I don't think so.
How about Project MK Ultra?
Yes, I think everyone knows about MK Ultra. That's why Ted Kaczynski, MK Ultra, he was hypnotized by the CIA to blow up buildings.
Well, this will be interesting because I love to go and do a whole larger podcast on Project MK Ultra. How about the Tuskegee experiment?
Yeah, I think so. Just you're gonna have to refresh me on that one.
That one is the one where they had given was it gonorrhea or syphilis to a whole group of black men in that area in Alabama, the Tuskegee area, and they didn't tell them they were giving them. They were saying they were doing a different study, and they wanted to do a study to see the effects of syphilis on people.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of that one.
They've since apologized for that. Again, this is something that originally was considered to be some sort of conspiracy, but then the government apologized for them doing that. Operation Fast and Furious.
Yes.
How about Operation
I hate
Popeye?
No.
Operation Northwoods.
Sounds familiar, but I'm going to say no.
Have you ever heard of the studies that were done, scientific studies that were done that changed people's perception of sugar and fat? And this happened in the 60s, I believe.
I mean, there's a lot of studies going on today, but I don't think I've heard of anything, any studies from the 60s regarding that.
How about the Great Reset?
Yes. Yeah, that's like current, so
Operation Ajax.
Ajax. Sounds familiar, but I want to say no.
Have you ever heard of the time when there was poison put into the booze during Prohibition?
Yes, yeah, I heard about that.
How about COINTELPRO?
COINTELPRO. Doesn't ring a bell.
How about you've heard of Hunter Biden's laptop?
Yeah.
How about the the Century for the New American? What is it? The Project for the New American Century. Trying to get that right in my head. And they're calling for a new Pearl Harbor. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, for World War III.
Actually, this was done around in the year 2000. It came out in 2001, but it was a lot of neocons who were writing this project for a New American Century.
9/11. I remember
And
that.
it was well. The thing is that they called for that. They said that basically they wouldn't be able to go to advance this agenda without a catastrophic and catalyzing event such as a new Pearl Harbor.
So we couldn't justify a war in the Middle East.
This was the year before 9/11. And have you ever heard of? Well, have you ever heard? This is the Creature from Jekyll Island. Have you ever heard? There's a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. But have you ever heard of the origins of the Fed?
Origins of the Fed.
And
I don't think so.
How that actually started.
No.
I would love to go through some of these at some point because it was really fascinating. These are things that, at one point or another, were considered to be just unfounded conspiracy theories. And the thing is about conspiracy theories is that when you look at them, anybody can theorize about conspiracies. Because if you see things that are happening, it can be in your own hometown where the local government is doing like, oh, this bid for a contract went to that person. It's like, oh, well, that's the mayor's buddy, and that could possibly be a conspiracy. And there are a lot of people who will say, yeah, come on, the mayor's buddy got it, and we don't even think that he was really, he deserved to get it at all, let alone get this for the price that they're going to pay him. That right there is a conspiracy, a theory about that conspiracy. You think that these two parties are colluding, and you're theorizing about that. You don't know exactly at that point. But that's where conspiracy theories actually are more normal than people realize, because this term has been weaponized. What I'm curious, one we didn't go on that list, but what I'm curious about is, what have you heard? Again, if you haven't delved into it too much, then that's one thing. But if you think about how your friends think of it, is the JFK assassination. What do you think about the JFK assassination, and what do you think that people your age are talking about the JFK assassination?
Well, I don't hear anyone in particular around my age really talking about it that much anymore. I mean, it happened so long ago. But the people that do talk about it around my age really seem to think that was an inside job conducted by the CIA. I mean, all the new evidence that keeps coming out about it, whether it's fake or real, it all keeps getting jumbled together. And it is possible that he was assassinated by the CIA. It was possible that he wasn't. But the fact of the matter is, JFK said that he was there. This is a quote, like a couple weeks before he was assassinated. I think it goes along the lines of, there's a plot in the government to enslave every man, woman, and child in this country, and I am going to stop it. And that's something along those lines. It's probably a little off, the quote, but that's essentially what he said a couple weeks before he was assassinated. He also was trying to basically what RFK is trying to do now. He wants to dismantle a bunch of government organizations, all those corrupt three-letter agencies, and those three-letter agencies probably work with foreign governments, Definitely a lot of money involved in it. Everything that has to do with evil has money to do with it. Obviously, no one would do anything evil if it didn't have anything money. If it didn't involve money or some kind of satanic religion or something along those lines to do the bidding of that god, like Moloch, that satanic. And there's a lot of, I believe, involvement around that because of what is it, the Bohemian Grove, right? Where they go out and do all that satanic ritual garbage with a bunch of high-ranking elites and all that. I believe in a lot of that stuff, and those three-letter agencies, I believe, are involved in a lot of all that dirty work that those high-ranking elites that I just mentioned want to do because they're in close with those people running those agencies, and they have the same satanic god they worship, and they have a lot of money circulating it, so they get those lower ranks and rank and file people to do their bidding. It's just such a huge structure of people that I could sit here all night trying to, piece together how it might work, and I'd never figure it out for sure because I don't know. But to get back to what you were saying about the JFK assassination, yeah, based off of everything I said, it's very likely that the CIA did assassinate JFK.
So let me ask you this: what do you think is the place for a citizen to consider conspiracy? How does a citizen think about possible conspiracies? We want to call it because, again, not just about conspiracy theories, but how about possible conspiracies? How should a citizen think about them? Should a citizen think that it's definitely possible, or should a citizen be listening and saying, "Oh, I want to filter this through the media"? Or how much do you think that the media actually gives the real facts in order for a citizen to think it through?
So I'm not sure of their existence right now. I'm pretty sure they're still doing good work. It's Project Veritas. Those are real journalists who go in and disguise themselves and go undercover to get real information. These are the kinds of journalists that the CIA would be assassinating back in the day, or maybe even today. I don't know. I wouldn't take anything the mainstream media says for granted, but definitely keep your ears out and listen for those things that the media says, and then cross-reference it with all your sources that you can possibly find. If you even want to consider the possibility of something being true, that goes without saying. Consider everything to possibly be true, but take everything with a grain of salt as well, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and a term that a lot of people like to throw around these days is misinformation. It doesn't seem to be a question of what news source I want to watch today. It's more of a question of which news source is actually telling the truth, and it's kind of sad that there's nothing protecting the American people from lies in the media, because again, going back to that huge structure of people, the media is part of that. Billionaires own these news outlets and control the news that's getting put out, and those billionaires pay off politicians or work under them. It's another huge conspiracy,
Now, do you think that people your age in general, you said that, and you said earlier that you feel like the independent parties, or at least the group of independents, is expanding, regularly to some extent, whatever that is. But do you feel that people your age believe the mainstream media, or do you think that the people your age tend to be skeptical of the mainstream media?
I think for the most part, if you get on the leftist side, the liberal side, they're going to be like, "Oh, CNN is telling the truth no matter what." And if you get on the right side, You know, people are like, "Oh, Fox News," especially with like older folks, like with Fox News. But I think most people who are my age and right wing don't even watch Fox News anymore. I have it on my phone, but just for like notifications of like some big breaking news happening, like if there's a shooting or something, so I can keep up on like what's going on with legislation regarding gun laws and things like that. Uh, I don't know a lot of other people who do that just keep up on like big things that are happening, because most people hear about around my age, they don't hear about it through news. They just log on to their social and find out it happens like on TikTok. Like I remember one time I found out about that that immigrant that killed those Irish kids on TikTok before I even heard about it on the news, because they just didn't report about it, because the Irish were rioting over it because it involved a minority. So they didn't report on it because it doesn't support the status quo that they want going on in this country.
My final question is that what are the outlets, social media aside, but what are some of the outlets that you personally tend to favor? Where do you get your information? That's not, I mean, you already mentioned TikTok. It's not that I'm put it aside, but TikTok and I don't know if you ever go on X or anything like any of these other ones. Um, but are there websites? Are there newspapers? Are there larger news organizations that you tend to favor to get your news?
So every time I picked up a newspaper, at least around here, they're just trying to find something to put on the front page because they don't want to report on real news. They don't want to report on the real problems. They just want to focus on this so they can push an agenda or push an idea onto people, and not focus on the real things that are going on in the world. So I tend to veer away from newspapers because it's the future. I get most of my media, like the places where you're gonna find like video evidence of things and voice recordings and testimonies and things like that, are just through social media. Honestly, like that's where I find most of my the truth. That's where I find most of the truth happens, because you turn on the TV and you watch a mainstream news outlet, and they're just going to give you snippets and cherry pick whatever they want. But people who actually care about the truth are fellow citizens, people who actually care about whether they're left or right. At least most people, I like to believe most people, their hearts are in the right place. They just don't have that proper guidance from God like we do. But most people, I do believe, have good intentions. So most people online, if they're trying to seek the truth, they're going to give you the whole truth and nothing but the truth, because they don't do it for money. They do it so they can make people more aware of something. So places like Twitter or X, if you call it that, I call it Twitter. I will always call it Twitter. TikTok. Sometimes, if you are lucky and they don't take the content down, you can find it on like YouTube or Instagram. I know a lot of YouTubers who just like to cover things and they get their channels demonetized because they talk about things that YouTube doesn't like. But they give out the truth of what's going on for nothing because they've been demonetized, and that's how you know that they're really just care about the truth. Places like that, you just need to find the right people. I can't name anyone in particular, because usually it's always a random person that I don't bother following. There's just so many people who actually care about these things, posting it online, making it easy for you to find these things.
Well, I think that's good. I mean, personally, I find that Twitter, I don't disagree that it's the dumpster fire that everybody says it is in general. I find that Twitter, you can get more real information if you average out all the stuff that you see.
Well, especially since Elon Musk took over, he really cares about no censorship, and he's even considering letting Alex Jones have a platform back on Twitter. I think the only reason is because all that Sandy Hook thing, the whole thing with Sandy Hook and Alex Jones. Some people believe I listened to that Tucker Carlson interview with him just the other day, and I think it was just yesterday because it just released yesterday. And he doesn't seem like a crazy person that you might have thought he was before. And some people actually think that Alex Jones committed the Sandy Hook shooting for some reason. It's really weird. If you listen, I highly recommend anyone listening to this go listen to that if they haven't already. It's the Tucker Carlson interview with Alex Jones. It's easy to find on his Twitter page. And like I said before, that misinformation. People think that he committed the shooting for whatever reason. But I'm glad that it's becoming more of a space for free speech and freedom to obtain this information from anyone, especially with the adding context and fact checking. You can put under people's posts. It really helps you thin out all that information and pick out what's fake and what's not.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think one thing that gets lost, even people in my generation, is that you shouldn't pick anything up to just blindly believe it. You know that you should be discriminating in what you think. You should be having discernment in what you're reading and what you're thinking through and what the facts are. Not even making a decision until you have more of the facts. I think part of the problem these days is that you're supposed to, by the end of an abbreviated article, have some opinion. Whereas I personally rarely have an opinion when I first start hearing about something. No matter what it is, I need to look into it more. I need to review more than information. But I feel like there are so many people who their thought is, I have to have an opinion on this one way or another by the time I'm done reading this. And it could even be a tweet. It could be a little video, but it's like, I need to be, now I've got to draw my line of where I stand on that. Whereas I personally don't. It takes a while for me to come to a conclusion. And I don't think that's, I think people in my generation aren't necessarily like that. I think that we've gotten to that point where we've bowed to immediate snap decisions. And I think that's always going to be a problem.
Yeah, and that's just how it was for so long. You just had to take what you saw for granted in the news. I'm sure that's how it was when you were growing up. You had to believe what you saw in the newspaper, and you had to believe what you saw on TV, because otherwise you just have to go find those people that were there in that moment on whatever they're reporting on. And you had no, but now we live in the age of information where everyone has access to everything, and it's easier to find what you need to find, especially nowadays, where people are trying to cover up all these things, but there are people working against that, actively working against those cover-ups and exposing what is true. Like, we know that there is a plan for a great replacement. People are talking about it in mainstream politics now. They're saying the quiet parts out loud. And that tells you that we're getting to a point where we're going to uncover all this trash and all these cover-ups to find out what's really going on in our country, what's really going on through these politicians' heads, what they're talking about with other politicians and billionaires, and hopefully we can, as a united America, take that down. Take that plan to destroy this country down.
I agree. I think that we have to be prepared. We have to be wary and vigilant.
Yeah. And I was hoping next time we could actually expand on that in figuring out, like, community building. How do you build a community? How do you get connected with people that are around you, people that are like you, people that agree with you, so you can create that community and create bonds and relationships with people so that you can prepare for what is coming inevitably. things that are going to happen in this country. You might feel safe now where you are, or maybe you don't, and you realize that you need to start doing this now. It's not too late. It's not too late to build a community and build friendships. All right. If you're shut in, we're gonna cover that too. All right. Hopefully, if Todd is okay with that.
I think that's great. I think that sounds like a fantastic thing to tackle next time.
So on that note, do you have any closing thoughts?
I think this is I think these are things that people need to talk about. Like, I think preparation needs to be talked about. I'm glad we're going to be talking about that. But I think even people are so afraid to even talk about things that would be labeled as conspiracy theories. And I want to encourage people to stand up and say, look, I'm not making a decision. I'm not, but I can entertain what the evidence is here or there. And I think discernment, discrimination, and thinking for yourself is the key.
That's a great note to end on. That's a great statement to end on. So I think I'm going to close it off now and the recording. Is that all you have to say? All right. Thank you for listening. Give us a follow. It really helps us with the algorithm if you like as well. You don't have to give us any money. We just want to get this message out there. And for those of you returning listeners, we are not dead. We're okay. And we will continue to upload regularly, hopefully, unless something happens. I'm not going to tell you what happened because, no. All right. Bye.